I messaged the guy who I was thinking might be my father, and I said, do you know somebody named Gayla? And he was like, that's my sister.
Willie D. Live.
And so they told her to beat feet to get out of there. And so she was like, she left and just left it alone. But so here it is. This was probably like 2012, 13 years ago that I found out that all this happened. You know what I mean? And I had that wound of being a throwaway or a piece of trash my whole life until I was here in Richmond, Texas at the Carol Vance unit. At a Charm Prison Ministry event that, 007 from the 5th Ward Boys. And
shout out 007.
Yeah, man. They all come into the prison and they whooped us on the basketball court. Charm Prison Ministry did. And then they fed us gumbo and brisket and all this stuff. You don't ever get any of that in prison, but we were at the Carol Vance unit. They brought that in and then they brought the gospel message. But man, that day I gave my life to Christ, and he called when I gave my life to Christ, he said, he called me son. And I had been wanting to hear that my whole life. He called me son. He said, I'm never going to leave you, and I'm never going to forsake you. And that in that moment, he gave me my position and my identity, and he called me son. And that was just something that mended that wound in my heart. I had a hole in my heart, and I didn't realize it, but it was a cross-shaped heart, and it was for the cross of Jesus Christ. And it mended that wound in my heart from that point forward. And not only that, but it took the guilt and the shame that I felt from killing my stepdad, the unwarranted guilt or whatever, some would say. And there is no condemnation in Jesus Christ. And so he took that guilt from me and said, I died for that too. Even if you feel like you did wrong, I died for all of that. You know what I mean? And so.
When you say your stepdad, this was the guy that your foster mom remarried?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, married to after after your
adopted dad.
Died. Did you ever get a chance to meet your biological mom?
I did not. So she was murdered when I was little. And then, but the interesting thing is right before January the 6th, because my adopted mom had told me about this guy who was one of the cowboys that worked for my adopted parents, right? And she said, I think this guy, Jeff Bates, is your dad. And so I reached out to him on Facebook, and I was like, hey, man, my adopted mom, before she passed, was telling me that she thinks you're my father. And I was talking to him, and he was like, he goes, I don't think I'm your dad. And he goes, but then he was like, well, if you need a dad, like I'll be your dad. And I was like, I don't need a dad. That's not what I'm more interested in anything, just having like the medical history of my family or knowing like your relatives and stuff like that. I don't need somebody to pretend to be my father. Right. So it was funny. But so I did one of those Ancestry DNA kits and got my DNA, and it gave me, where I'm descended from and all this stuff. Well, it shows like distant cousins and, and then it shows like close relatives that you share a lot of DNA with. And there was one lady that was only one person that was a really close relative to me. And her name was, I think it was Gayla. And so I was like, I don't know any Gayla. So I messaged the guy who I was thinking might be my father. And I said, do you know somebody named Gayla? And he was like, that's my sister. And I was like, there it is. I said, well, come to find out, you are my dad, So I waited.
But you never took a DNA test with him?
Well, so this was right before January the 6th. So I took a Ancestry DNA. I ordered one and had it mailed to him. Well, he sent it in, and then I looked like a few weeks later, and it popped up, and it was like, your father his name's Jeff Bates, but he is your father. And so,
wow.
But then I got arrested like a month or two later after January the 6th. And so I hadn't had a chance to meet him.
I
hadn't even really thought about it till you brought me down this hole right here in this conversation. So I'm looking forward to that. But
wow, man, that's interesting. Damn, man, you got a book there, man. You probably got 2 books.
Yeah, we good, man.
Damn.